Welcome everyone. Today we're wrapping up this semester with a hands-on practical session focused on designing posters. Poster presentations are a core communication skill not only in research settings but also in policy analysis. So by the end of today, you should feel confident translating policy briefs and your analytic work into clear, visually engaging posters that can stand on their own and communicate your key message effectively. Here are the objectives for today. First, to become familiar with posters as communication tools. We often think of posters as purely academic, but they can be incredibly powerful in policy settings, especially when we need to communicate quickly to decision makers. Second, we'll talk about what makes an effective poster, clarity, readability, visual hierarchy, and finally, we'll walk through common mistakes, things like overcrowding or using unclear graphics, and how to avoid these mistakes when you turn your written work into a poster. So the first section focuses on key components that make up a strong poster. Think of this as the structural blueprint, what absolutely must be there, and what can be simplified. Also, how each section plays a role in guiding your audience through the message that you want to convey. What is a poster? I like this definition by George Hess because it centers posters as visual communication tools. It's not just a mini paper on a board. It's rather a medium for sparking conversation, and good posters will help you distill your message so clearly that people grasp the essence of your work in under a minute. Your goal here is to communicate the main takeaway quickly, attractively, and accurately. If your poster can start a conversation or invite a question, it's working. So why use a poster in policy analysis? So there are three key reasons and likely more. First, posters can let you summarize complex work, like your policy briefs, in a visual way that people can understand quickly. They help you disseminate findings to a wider audience, especially at events or stakeholder meetings. And posters are actually great networking tools. Conferences use them to create space for dialogue, so think of your poster as your entry point to broader conversations in this field. This is a model poster layout um, from CUNY. The structure is very similar across all public health disciplines. At the top, you have your title, which should reflect the underlying issue or policy question. Then your institutional affiliation, which helps establish credibility. The body of the poster then includes your introduction or background, your methods, key results, and a focused discussion. You should also include implications for public health or policy because this is especially important for our field. And finally, don't forget practical elements like the literature that you will cite, your acknowledgments, and any further information you want to give your audience. The main lesson here is there is a hierarchy. Your poster should guide the viewer's eye from the title to the conclusions in a logical, clean flow. And here is a mock-up of a policy analysis poster tailored specifically to this course. Unlike scientific posters, which focus heavily on methods and results, a policy analysis poster is structured around the policy problem and the options that you will have evaluated. You'll notice the flow starts with the policy issue at the top and the context around it, and this sets up why the topic matters, as you know already from your assignments. Then you have policy options, where you summarize the different interventions or approaches that you considered. And below the context, you have your evaluative criteria, which should align with your policy analysis framework. Focus here on effectiveness, equity, feasibility, cost, and acceptability. The large central box then is where you will compare the options, and present your key results. Finally, your recommendations should be clear, evidence-based, and tied directly to the evaluation. Don't pull recommendations from elsewhere unless you've already covered them in your analysis. This structure mirrors the logic of a policy memo, but translate it into a visual format. Then here are two real-world poster examples that illustrate different approaches. So first on the left is a traditional scientific research poster. You'll notice several characteristics typical of academic posters. There's a heavy emphasis on data, large tables, detailed figures, statistical outputs. The layout is quite dense with a lot of text packed into the sections, which we'll come to later. But the results are communicated primarily through technical visuals like here we, we used a network analysis, so there are network diagrams. This style works well for research conferences where the audience expects complex data and is comfortable interpreting technical graphics. Now let's move to the poster on the right, which is more aligned with policy communication. It's visually cleaner and intentionally structured to guide the viewer. There's a clear background section that introduces the problem in accessible terms. Then you have methods and results summarized with simple bar graphs and short explanatory text. Here I might actually use bullets instead of text blocks, but that's up to you. Then there's a conclusion box that clearly calls out the key implications and uses color to highlight main ideas without overwhelming the viewer. It's designed for broader audiences, including policymakers, practitioners, and even the public could read this. And as you look at both posters, you may ask yourself, where does my eye go first? Which poster feels easier to navigate? Which one communicates its main messages more efficiently? Remember, both styles can be effective, but they serve different purposes to different audiences. For policy analysis, clarity, hierarchy, and visual balance matter more than showing every detail. Remember, the goal of a poster is not to display everything that you did, it's to highlight the most important insights and spark a conversation around your main message. Now let's shift into the practical side, some tips for making your poster effective. These are the design principles that will help your work stand out in a crowded conference hall. And before you even open PowerPoint, there are a few things you need to clarify. First, who is your target audience? Are they policymakers, researchers, community groups? That should shape your tone, vocabulary, and level of detail. Second, what is your main message? A poster should have one core takeaway message, not five. Third, what does your viewer need to know to understand that message? That helps you decide what stays and what gets cut. Then you can start gathering the pieces. Draft your content, sketch a rough outline, and list any figures or graphics that you may need. This planning step will save you a lot of time later. Next, we have text, which is one of the most common problem areas on student posters. Here are some rules of thumb. People should be able to read key information from 6 to 9 feet away, which means large fonts and minimal clutter. Use bullets and clear headings to make scanning easy. Avoid putting bullets on section titles, rather let the font size do the work. Also avoid long text blocks. If a section is more than 8 to 10 sentences, it's way too much. And stick to clean fonts like Arial or Helvetica. Titles around 70 to 100 points are recommended, and subheadings around 40, wherein you then have the body text around 24. And remember that less is always more. So decorative or 3D text almost always hurts readability. Then for the layout, the main goal is to help the viewer follow your story without getting overwhelmed. Avoid overpacking your poster. Aim for no more than 800 words. Use negative space intentionally to help your content breathe and make the poster easier to read. Think about a focal point that you want to help draw your viewers' attention to. Something that is natural, like a key figure or a box summary. And finally, follow natural reading patterns, top to bottom, left to right. Your poster should guide the viewer intuitively. Graphics can make or break a poster. They're essential for explaining complex ideas visually. Here you may use diagrams, flowcharts, graphs to complement but not replace your text. A good rule of thumb is about a 50-50 balance. Make sure graphics are high resolution. That means at least 150 dpi, ideally 30 or higher, so that they print clearly. And remember, an image that looks great on your laptop may look pixelated when printed full size. So always check before you actually submit. Then color is a powerful tool, but only when you use it thoughtfully. Try to stick to a simple palette of no more than 5 colors. Too many colors can make your poster look chaotic. Also avoid textured or overly decorative backgrounds because they distract from your content. You may want to choose light backgrounds when possible because very dark backgrounds look dramatic on a screen and tend to print poorly and make text hard to read. Then, before you start working on your own posters, I want to highlight a few common pitfalls that can easily weaken an otherwise strong analysis. First is being too wordy. This is the number one issue. Post Posters are not only your mini policy brief, you may call it, but you want to use the fewest words possible while still making a clear point. Think of it as writing for people who will only give you no more than 30 seconds of their attention. Second, jargon and acronyms. When we're immersed in a topic, we tend to forget how specialized our language can be. Acronyms, technical terms, and discipline-specific vocabulary actually create barriers, especially in policy spaces where your audience might include community partners, clinicians, journalists, or policymakers with limited time. Third is too many colors, fonts, or even sections. Visual clutter makes a poster much harder to read. So keep your design consistent, use a small intentional color palette, and no more than 2 fonts. Fourth, inaccessible color combinations. Many common color pairings like green-red are impossible to distinguish for people with color vision deficiencies. If you're unsure, run your poster through a color blindness simulator. And then fifth, putting too much information into a single paragraph. Remember that people view posters from far away. If your audience can't instantly interpret your graph, it's not functioning well. So simplify, simplify, simplify. These pitfalls are easy to avoid once you're aware of them, and addressing them will dramatically improve the clarity and impact of your final poster. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention today and throughout the semester. Poster presentations are one of the most effective ways to communicate complex policy analysis in a visual, accessible format, and mastering this skill will help you in both academic and professional settings. That's it for our lectures, so well done on your progress this semester. I'll be grading your final assignments as soon as I can after you submit them, So please make sure that you submit by the due date. And thanks very much.